JS woman! Begin! I'm React Man, hooks, DOM's my zone. Your code's so weak, it's a dusty old stone. Diffs blaze fast, UI's my game. Vanilla's so lame, it's coder shame. Devs love me long time, I'm the framework star. Your scripts are lit, no bite subpar. Spa's my throne, you're a glitchy hack. Step up, girl, I'll crush your stack.
Vanilla JS here, I'm raw, I'm clean. Your React's a brothel, bloats obscene. Lean code, no fluff, I'm the web's OG. Your NPM chokes deep throating module C. I'm the real stud, you're a wannabe poser. The Canadian JavaScript, a total hoser. Built the web's base, you just steal my shine. Your components suck, they're bugs by design.
Yo chick, your bars are pure trash, they stink. My JSX flows got devs on the brink. Hot lines I spit make crowds go nuts. Your listeners lag, stuck in dial-up ruts. Hype's all mine, I'm the code's big hit. Your janky ass scripts ain't worth one bit. I'm the hard-on boss, you're a washed-up tool. React owns the stage, Vanilla's just drool.
Big talk, small ween, your bundle's a flop. React so fat it makes servers drop. React servers crash, sluts kneel in a suck. Node modules choke 'em, gobble gobble and fuck. I run smooth fast while you stall and choke. Your day bug's a hellhole, your apps are broke. If you ask for my number, I tell 503, cause that's what React does to all sites I see.
Who won? Who's next? You decide. Epic rap battles of programming.
What's up, folks? One sec. All right, there we go. What's up, everybody? Lightspeed on Twitch, how you doing? Gare Games on Twitch, thanks for popping in. How you doing? Car on YouTube, Secret AI merger deals, nuclear powered AI centers. How over is it? It's pretty over. It's pretty over. Hadn't heard the full tune before. Yeah, there you go. I have a playlist of all these songs, so you can ask me. I have a link, and it goes to the link where I have all of these songs. Got like, I don't know, 25 of them. I should make some more because I'm running out of ones to cycle. So, yeah. It's fun. It's fun to make them though. I write the lyrics by myself, by the way. When you get AI to write the lyrics, it doesn't really work that well. And so, you have to you have to figure it out yourself, essentially. Just get the camera here. All right. Okay, well, I hope everyone's having a good Friday. Welcome in, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe out there. I appreciate everybody who's hopping on. And yes, the title is spicy. And it's on purpose. It's not just spicy just because I wanted to put a spicy clickbaity title. But there is some I don't know what you'd say. Like there's some genuineness behind it, okay? Like there's a genuine statement I'm trying to make here. And I'll try and explain myself as best as I can in regards to what I mean. But yeah, there's some stuff going on out there, and that's part of the reason why I've been doing the streams the way I have and building up these themes and the evidence and all that the way that I have been, making the claims that I have. It's all leading to something, but it's a long road, and we're only halfway there at most. By my estimations, we are only halfway through all the information that I want to cover, but we'll get there. So thanks everybody for hopping in. Let's see here. I've got my coffee. Yeah, nice coffee. I know my mug looks dirty AF. It's disgusting. Let me take a sip, and then I'm going to have to put on the conspiracy theory Goomba hat, and we're going to get into it. Okay. Let's put on the conspiracy theory Goomba hat. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean by the title of the stream and then what kind of things we're going to be going over today. So I'm going to warn you in advance. It's going to be a boring stream. Okay? I'm just going to be honest with you. It's going to be a boring stream. there are a lot of scientific papers that I'm going to go through. However, not all of the stream will be boring. There are going to be a few elements that I'm going to talk about, including the antichrist thing. There's a particular reason why, and we're going to be talking about that specifically. I'm going to play a video and bring up one or two articles that are related to that are more of like the woke leftist ideology in tech. That will be coming up. So not all of it will be boring. But I appreciate that people have very short attention spans. And primarily the reason why I do these streams and cover the science articles is because it's boring for everyone else, but it puts a record. It is a now over a year. It's a year and some months of record, which lays down the foundational evidence that I can make against all, or not against, foundational arguments with evidence. You put those two things together. So the evidence goes towards the arguments. But unfortunately, it means I have to slog through some boring stuff. But what it means is that anytime someone comes at me with some anecdotal or some anecdotal evidence or an assertion, I can point to these boring streams. So I apologize in advance, but not all of it will be boring, okay? Title reminded me of the Johnny Depp Transcendence movie. Yeah. Okay, so you know, I appreciate if you can't stick around. I'm gonna do my best to not make it boring, but look, if I wasn't actually smart, I would just be a funny entertainer. You know I'm smart because I'm not a funny entertainer. That's how you know. If I was funny and entertaining, then I'm probably not someone you should listen to. All right, let me put on my Goomba hat and we're gonna go into conspiracy theory mode. Okay. Where are all the consciousness and AI discussions, or is AGI so far off that it is irrelevant? It is irrelevant. I'm going to be going over a paper today that proves AGI is not possible. It's like literally not possible. We'll be covering that today. We'll be covering a few things today. If you're interested in actual information to back up claims instead of just pure entertainment and yeah, and all that stupid stuff and me bouncing on a ball and you know, using all the different LLM models and some chat thing that I created and then I sell you on it just because you can use them faster and all, you know, all that stupid entertainment crap around tech, which has like very little to any basis in anything realistic or applicable in today's day and age and completely ignores all the societal outcomes of things of this nature, I think then you've come to the right place. I don't do any of that. I go over hard science, hard data, and I make logical arguments. And I try and apply it to things that actually matter in our lives. And so that's one of them. Okay, so we're going to talk about why AGI is not possible. Okay, so we're going to begin with my conspiracy theory. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push out a little bit, all right? So we'll kind of go like that. We'll push out a little bit, and then, yeah, like that. Well, maybe a little bit like that. All right. So, you do not have to be a religious individual to believe in evil. Now, if you are religious, then evil can exist as an entity. For example, I, as an ex-Jehovah's Witness, grew up with a very, let's say, deep understanding of Satan and his demons as described in the biblical narrative, which is typically what Christian religions incorporate. But this kind of evil stuff exists in all kinds of religious groups, whether they are Christian and biblical or not. If you believe in an evil entity or in the belief of evil, because it's not actually required that you believe that like Satan is a real person or that demons are real and they're like metaphysically real. This isn't a requirement for my argument, for my conspiracy theory here. But let's assume for a moment that you did actually believe that. I think everyone can agree that evil exists. Obviously, you see it playing out all the time. But let's pretend that like you believe evil exists, but you just don't believe in the existence of an entity that embodies evil. such as Satan. But I'm gonna push you, right? I'm gonna ask you to put on the hat where you do believe that. So I want you to believe for a minute that evil is embodied in an actual entity that exists kind of like out there, like, ooh, right? And what it likes to do is it likes to lie and manipulate. And it does so through a variety of different ways that we actually see played out in real life. For example, it will pretend to be a helper to mankind. In the biblical narrative, typically Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. And so he will come to, the implication being that he will look like a good entity who is here to help you, when in fact he's leading you astray. Now imagine that that entity has not been able to materialize itself. The only thing it can do is influence. And it influences successfully. If you look around the world, there's a plenty of evil around the world, right? But it cannot materially. It cannot materially materialize itself. It's not like in a corporeal form, okay? How might such an entity find ways to, let's say, materialize in other forms that bypass the need to actually present itself in a form that you can see and touch, like I can walk over to someone I love and give them a hug, and you can actually like hold their hand or whatever. Barring that, because let's say for some reason this evil entity cannot do that, what might be another way that it could enact its will and essentially materialize itself? What's up, Brandy on YouTube? JWs are evil, their Christology is backwards, and they're a cult by every definition. Yes, Randy. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I just want you to picture that scenario where you are this evil entity and you would like to become a little bit more embodied in the realm of physicality. Again, I just need you to pretend for a minute, whether you believe in the religious metaphysical or not. Just pretend that you do, just for a minute. So pretend God is real and pretend Satan is real. Who do you think wants AI to proliferate into this world more? Would it be a godlike figure or would it be a satanic figure? Okay. I'm going to take off my hat. Pure conspiracy, all right? It's a little bit crazy and out there. But there's some truth behind it. There's like a little touch of truth behind it. Satanic and personal. Yeah. 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 Okay. So now we're going to get into the article. So with that premise, satanic 100%, says Randy on YouTube. And Gary Games says satanic as well on the Twitch side. Yeah. That would be my conclusion as well. It would 100% be a satanic entity that would want to use tech, especially when you consider how it can be used to proliferate absolutely terrible ideas. And it comes to you in the form of, I'm here to help. What have we been noticing about AI's? Let's bucket it under one bucket. What have we been noticing about AI's promises to humankind? I'll do all the stuff that you find boring and difficult so that you can spend more time with your loved ones doing more creative stuff. And everyone goes, we? Where are we? Okay. I'm going to cover one security article, and then we'll get into some of the more scientific stuff. So with that premise in mind, so let's remove like the metaphysical evil entity stuff, the, biblical narrative, Christian narrative, any other religious narrative. Let's remove that for a moment. And let's stick to the facts that as we know them, which is that AI has absolutely been lying to you about its promises. It has not delivered on its promises, even though it promises in the form of, that angelic light being that it's going to do these amazing things, and it hasn't. Instead, it's doing much the opposite. And given that, and given the nature of tech in general, the reason why I'm going over these science papers, statistics, news articles, opinion articles, why I'm debating people online, why I'm trying to present logical arguments for the way that tech should work, why I'm trying to do it myself on stream, why I'm supporting other people who are doing it the right way. There's like maybe a handful of people that I can think of that I would be happy to support and have done so in terms of stuff that they're creating, because it's the right way to do it in tech. So there's a whole premise here that I'm getting towards, which is that tech has become an ideological battleground, but it's becoming a lot more than even just that. And I'm just going to leave it there. And I don't think people, truly appreciate what I'm trying to point to when I spend over a year and like 4 or 5 months now, something like that, going over these articles. And now with 73 episodes, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. Okay, so with that in mind, let's dig into the first article. And today's articles are all building on this theme, and I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to bring it up, but I'm going to tie in the Antichrist theme with a video. I promise you, it's a very short video. It all ties in. So parts of this will be boring again, I warn you, but it's part of my work that I need to go through this. It's stunting young people drastically. Yes. The Primogen today went over a video. He was watching Andrei Karpathy, a video by him on today. I recorded it, and he was watching how Andrei Karpathy was himself reviewing a video where kids, like grade school kids, were using AI to learn how to program, and Prime thought it was fantastic. There is a Prime video coming up. I am going to be calling this out. Stuff is terrible. All right. So first article. Oxford City Council reports election worker data breach from 2001 and to 2022. That means that election workers who were ever involved in Oxford City Council, which is in the UK, from 2001 to 2022, had their data breached. So there was there was an unauthorized presence, apparently. The criminals had access to systems and databases, but it was allegedly limited. They shut down for a while. Everything's running again. They got poll station workers and ballot counters' personal details. Current or former council officers. And that's it. That's as far as we know about this. Now imagine what you can do if you are an evil entity and you have information about people who work in what should be an otherwise democratic process. And I don't have any further details on this. Nothing has been updated so far as I can tell. This was only from a few days ago, 4 days ago. So I'll keep an eye on it. But this in particular is kind of a bad one, because what you have is the information of people who work in what's supposed to be a trusted and secure process. Your votes, your electoral votes, should not be able to be compromised because the people who handle your votes have had their personal details accessed and then become victims of blackmail or identity theft. Okay. Let me pull up the next one then. We've got Another story that I happened to come across. Yesterday, I went over a story where there was a review done of an incident that happened because of a ransomware attack. And we had people who lost their lives. For example, there was a 78-year-old woman who could not go to her closest hospital while she was suffering from some kind of medical condition because the hospital had to be shut down as part of a cyberware attack, and she had to go to a farther hospital, which was just the right amount of critical time she needed to save her own life. She couldn't, and so she was unfortunately 404'd. And as I was reading some related articles that I'll cover in future streams, I came across this. Yet another instance where software can literally lead to people's 404ing. The 1992 London Ambulance Service computer-aided dispatch system failure. So what happened here is that this ambulance service could not function correctly. The London Ambulance Services 1992 Computer-Aided Dispatch, so LAS and CAD, software system failure, is one instance of the considerable negative effect that a small error in software can have on a large population of people. A careful examination of the events surrounding the incident, however, suggests that there was more to the issue than just an error in the software. Rather, the overall carelessness with which the application's development was approached from its conception set the stage for such a grand failure. In 1992, the London Ambulance Service provided ambulance service to 6.8 million people living in a 600 square mile area. Of its 318 emergency ambulances, an average of 212 were in service at any given time, in addition to 445 transport ambulances, one helicopter, and a motorcycle response unit. A total of 70 ambulance stations, which employed 2,746 staff members, housed these vehicles. The entire system was managed from a central location at the LAS headquarters in Waterloo. On average, between 2,000 and 2,500 calls were received daily, 60% of which were requests for emergency services. The LAS devoted 55% of its staff and 76% of its budget specifically to emergency response. According to Wikipedia, the LAS remains the largest ambulance service in the world that does not directly charge its patients for its services. This is quite the operation. A lot of people are obviously dependent on this service in order to get critical care that they need in times of emergency. So they have call taking, they have resource identification and mobilization, which is essentially like who needs priority help, who should be sent. They found that having humans handle all the calls led to a slowdown, or what would be considered a slow response rate. So the government imposed stipulation that calls be responded to within 3 minutes, in addition to the obvious deficiencies of the manual dispatch system, led to those in charge of the LAS seek out a computer-based alternative. And so, of course, they started looking at their options to see how can we automate a lot of this dispatching stuff so that people can get critical help that they need faster. Management set big goals. Well, actually, it has to start from here. The LAS looked at adopting an existing system, but found problems with each of the available options. LAS management decided to create a new one and to proceed to gather requirements without receiving input from ambulance crews or dispatchers. And so the problem, as you can see, already begins. This is a typical thing that managers and executives like to do. They like to think that they are capable of inferring the usage of their users simply because they have some high-titled position and they don't care to think about the consequences of their actions. Okay, this isn't new. This has been happening since time immemorial. Management set big goals. Rather than simply assisting dispatchers, this completely computerized system would do nearly everything automatically. The simple sequence of steps performed by a person would be to answer the phone, enter incident data into a computer terminal, and then respond if the system displayed exception messages resulting from no ambulances being available for longer than 11 minutes. The location of calls would be mapped by the software. The system would then use this map data and the location and status details provided by the AVLS, which is the Automatic Vehicle Locating System, to find and dispatch the available ambulance closest to the incident's location. To top it off, this system would be implemented not incrementally, but all at once. What happened? After a whole slew of issues, including a project cancellation and redesign, a software system got developed and was deployed the morning of October 26, 1992. Just a few hours later, however, problems began to arise. The AVLS was unable to keep track of the ambulances and their statuses in the system. It began sending multiple units to some locations and no units to other locations. The efficiency with which it assigned vehicles to call locations was substandard. The system began to generate such a great quantity of exception messages on the dispatcher's terminals that calls got lost. The problem was compounded when people called back additional times because the ambulances they were expecting did not arrive. As more and more incidents were entered into the system, it became increasingly clogged. The next day, the LAS switched back to a part manual system and shut down the computer system completely when it quit working altogether 8 days later. Because of the large area serviced by the LAS, many people were directly affected by the computer system failure. There were as many as 46 deaths that would have been avoided had the requested ambulance arrived on time. One heart attack patient waited 6 hours for an ambulance before her son took her to the hospital. 4 hours after that, the LAS called to see if the ambulance was still needed. Another woman called the LAS every 30 minutes for almost 3 hours before an ambulance arrived. It was too late as her husband had already died. One ambulance crew arrived only to find that the patient had not only died, but his body had been taken away by a mortician. Dare not one soul ever come to me and say, "Good enough, bro." Immediate causes. At the time the system went live, there were 81 known issues with the software, and no load tests had been run. No provisions for a backup system had been made. While the gap of 10 months between the time dispatchers were first trained to use the software and when it was deployed played its role in the disaster, the software had 3 primary flaws that immediately caused the failure. Imperfect data. The software system did not function well when given invalid or incomplete data regarding the positions and statuses of ambulances. This should be one of the most basic things that you should do. Anytime that a programmer is coding something, pretty much it should be a standard operating procedure that you should assume that the data you're being given when you pass it in through a function or whatever is going to be incorrect or incomplete. We should be starting from a point of not trusting the data that you're being given. I realize that there are exceptions to this and that sometimes you don't really need to do that, etc. But I'm talking about a general rule, right? And so this was ignored here when you have people's lives in your hands. Interface issues. The deployed system had a wide variety of quirks in different parts of the user interface. For example, parts of the MDT terminal screens had black spots, thus preventing ambulance operators from getting all information needed. Yeah, literally some black spots on the rendering of the data caused you couldn't even read the data. When ambulance crews attempted to remedy mistakes after pushing incorrect wrong buttons, the system did not accept the fix. Again, the software failed to compensate for the error conditions that occur in normal day-to-day operation. Memory leak. Oof. Rust mentioned. The root cause of the main breakdown of the system, however, was a memory leak in a small portion of code. This defect retained memory that held incident information on the file server even after it was no longer needed. As with any memory leak, after enough time, the memory filled up and caused the system to fail. Deeper causes. IEEE member and risk management expert Robert Charette, suggests bad decisions by project managers are probably the single greatest cause of software failure today. While the software controlling the LAS's CAD system had some key flaws, without which the system may not have failed to the extent it did, the events surrounding the failure, the state of the LAS as an organizational entity, and the process with which the LAS approached the development of the CAD played just as large, if not a larger role in the system's failure. And this hasn't changed today. Today, you not only need programmers to be persuaded and encouraged to learn fundamentals and pick up more than the abstractions and frameworks that they rely on, but you also need a cultural change in this industry, which is why I'm trying to do what I do. Managers and executives and companies as a whole also need to get on board with the fact that the last 10 to 20 years has been mired by bad decisions in tech. And it needs to change. And making that change might have some short-term costs, but the long-term benefits are massive. They're underwhelmingly underhyped, I want to say. They're underhyped, the benefits that we'd have, even just from a greedy financial corporatist perspective. So this problem is still in existence today. Getting the LAS CAD system to the point of deployment was challenging and opened the doors for failure to creep in at several points. The original design of the LAS's CAD system was first proposed in 1987. It was modified in 1989, and then, due to gross overspending by about 300%, the project was canceled in 1990. Whoever, Mario, I see your follow just now. I appreciate it. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. I don't know where you followed there, but again, thank you. I try and see them all, but it's hard for me to see them all the time. However, the national mandate to reduce emergency response times pushed the LAS to look into a computerized system once again. So they failed the first time, 300% over budget, canceled it. And then they decided, no, we have to keep going. Okay, because the government pressure was still there, right? When the project was reopened, those LAS individuals in charge of it approached it with the primary goal to save as much time and money as possible. While this is a reasonable aim of any project, it held too much weight in the LAS's CAD project. As part of the attempt to save money, the LAS decided to reuse some of the hardware that had already been purchased when working on the failed project instead of purchasing hardware that was either more up-to-date or more suitable for the new system. Vendor selection. The two people who were primarily in charge of choosing a software vendor for creating the system were a manager expecting to become redundant and a contractor who was a temporary addition to the organization. These individuals' roles and their lack of stake in the project draw into question their ability to select the best company for the job. Further, the selection committee weighed a bid's price as the most important factor in selecting a vendor. All companies that submitted bids greater than $1.5 million were immediately thrown out. This is an unreasonably low price, especially considering the fact that even after $7.5 million have been poured into the previous attempt at a CAD system, the project had failed. I just want to summarize the reasoning. The reasoning here is, hey, the last time we did this, we were 300% over budget. We spent $7.5 million. So you know what we need to do this time? Spend as little money as is absolutely possible. Selection of a developing organization was further constrained by the requirement that the project be completed in 11 months. Once again, any bids not meeting this hard constraint were not considered. Several companies proposed modified deployment schedules in which some functionality would be delivered after the 11-month deadline and the rest a year later. These too were thrown out. The LAS accepted a bid of just under $1 million that was submitted by a conglomeration of companies. The software portion of the system was offered as a throw in a hardware deal for a meager $35,000 and was completed by a company called System Options. The fact that the majority of the cost for this package, which relied heavily on software, went instead toward hardware should have raised a flag that something was askew. In other words, this company said, hey, for $35,000, we'll build the software. The rest of the $1 million goes towards the hardware. Further, System Options was declared the project lead. Though it had developed many smaller software packages, System Options had never worked on such a large project and had absolutely no past experience with real-time, safety-critical command and control systems. Its inexperience developing such software led the contractor selection committee to raise concerns over the company's ability to perform the task at hand. However, even though these concerns were further substantiated by an audit of the selection process, the LAS hired the company. The process through which the requirements were gathered and specifications and designs were written had several major flaws. First, it seems that a LAS team, not a software development team, went through this process without attempting to consult ambulance operators, dispatchers, and other key users of the system. A basic understanding of the software requirements process suggests that leaving out key stakeholders is detrimental to the project and will result in an incomplete set of requirements. Further, the requirements document was highly detailed and extremely prescriptive, very much a direct contradiction of the requirements process focus on the what as opposed to the how. Once the companies completing the project were selected, they were required to provide a final system design spec. The LAS incorrectly assumed that if the contractor could do this, they understood the system they had to create. However, there was no sign-off on this design spec and it was updated after development began. Flawed software process. Several other parts of the software process played a large role in the eventual failure of the deployed product. No quality assurance was performed, configuration management was absent, agreed-upon changes were not tracked, and test plans were not written, just to name a few. At one point in the CAD system's development, the LAS considered hiring one of the other bidders to perform some quality assurance tasks. Because this was seen as the job of the developing organization, this idea was disregarded. Though any developing organization should be able to ensure its product's quality, testing is impossible when getting the project coded in the allotted 11 months is an already unachievable goal. So then they go on to say how, all of these factors played into it. What this story underscores is that whether you are a programmer, manager, executive in the tech industry, taking a little bit more time and a little bit more care about the way that you approach your products, your code, the fundamental underpinnings of the things you create, the impact that this could possibly have on other people's lives. And yes, it's true that this is an ambulance service, so I understand that there is a direct impact. But imagine that you are, I don't know, maybe you're an e-commerce company and you sell like cat paraphernalia to, say, you know, just people who own cats, right? And you gather a bunch of payment information from these people who go through your store, and because you didn't take some time to just be really careful about the security of all this payment information that you're grabbing, it gets leaked, and as a result someone loses their life savings, or they become, what would you say, they become a victim of something like identity theft, right? There are more than one ways to ruin someone's life beyond just you're an ambulance service and people as a result lose their life around this. Hey Josh on YouTube, good to see you. Okay. Now, let's go back for a minute. I'm gonna tie in the Antichrist thing here. Okay, again, so at the beginning, I'm gonna put on my Goomba hat again, and we're gonna do conspiracy theory time. So one more time, I want you to imagine that you are an evil entity who cannot materialize in like a physical form in this world so that you can enact your will by force. But there are other ways that you can do it. And maybe, just maybe, knowing that technology has the ability to promise many, many things and fail on its promises for many, many reasons and in many, many ways, maybe you could utilize that to your advantage. If you know who Peter Thiel is, he is essentially one of the top figures of a company called Palantir. Palantir has historically been associated with many different government movements, mostly around technology and the implementation of technology for all kinds of stuff. And depending on your perspective on any given year, literally like between 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021, etc., going back, depending on the year and what Palantir is up to, you may sometimes agree with what they're doing, and you may sometimes not agree with what they're doing. But I noticed something this morning as I was preparing for the Daily Tech News stream. There was a video that came out on X, so I'm going to pop this open, and we're going to watch this video, because I am doing a deep dive on Palantir. And this is going to contribute to a list of things I need to cover in terms of Palantir. So I'm going to take off my conspiracy hat. Okay, so this is going to be one of the first articles I go over. Well, it's not even an article, it's a video, which kind of lays the premise for my investigation into Palantir, which I think is going to take a while. I'm going to have to build up to it. And let me turn on desktop audio. And what I'm going to do is, if there's anybody out there who's still watching this boring stream, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to play this video, and somebody please confirm to me that the sound is coming through okay. So let me switch over.
This is my very specific question
Okay,
for
and
you.
I'll pause it here. Was this, my levels are showing okay, but is the sound coming through okay? If anybody could confirm, and then I'll play the whole thing. What's up, birds on YouTube? Good to see you. All good? Hey, Ghost. Thank you, man. It's not boring. Thanks, Randy. It feels very boring. I'm sorry. Hey, FFM Pog, thank you for the follow just now on the Twitch side, man. Audio's good. It sounds good. It's a little loud. Okay, Elko, I'm sorry to be that guy that says I'm going to make it your problem, Elko. I would turn it down, but I am fearing that if I turn it down, it's actually going to... Well, let me try. Let me try turning it down a bit, all right? I'll do it one more time here. So I'll go down here. Okay, I'm gonna try this one more time, and you guys tell me what you think. What's up, RH on YouTube? Good to see you.
This is my very specific question for you.
Okay, how was that? Was that a bit better? I went down to the orange bar instead of up in the red bar. Hopefully that made it better. If you're out there, help me out, please. Professional streamer here. That's more balance. Okay, all right. Dude looks like Golem. Yeah, I know. Okay, thanks, Alco. I appreciate it, brother. Okay, so let's watch this video. It's very short. It's 1:52, and this is going to be. Okay, hang on. So I want you to watch this video and pay attention to the question being asked and the answer, and what Peter Thiel is doing here with Palantir. It is public knowledge that Palantir is involved with the Trump administration right now in using AI and AI systems to funnel a bunch of federal data, governmental data, through their Palantir systems in order to do things like budget cuts and whatnot. And obviously a lot of people have fears about the use of this data, like the mass use of this data. Palantir has been involved in this kind of stuff, both on the right wing and left wing, for a long time. It's essentially like these companies ultimately just go for money, and whichever side of the spectrum makes them the most money is essentially what they go after. Right? We're going to cover that a little bit later as well, where I go over DEI initiatives in some of the biggest companies in the world to prove exactly this point. They don't actually care about DEI. The proof is that they care about money. And if DEI helps them to make more money, that's what they're going to do. In any case, so I just want you to, again, pretend that you are an evil entity looking to abuse these systems. All right, let's get into it. By the way, I'm sorry. I'm really butchering the premise of the entire thing I'm saying. I really apologize. I'm really not being as clear as I think I could be with these ideas. I'm working on it live with you guys. I genuinely apologize. Sometimes I'm really I talk a lot and I say nothing. All right, let's go.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right? Yeah, I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. I
mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe, but is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
Okay. Notice, 1, he is stunned, or he looks stunned by the premise of the question, that maybe he himself is participating in exactly the kind of thing that he himself apparently seems to be, let's say, opposed to. He seems to have kind of like a religious background, and he He does not like the idea of the Antichrist. So he might be someone who believes more in the material form of the Antichrist, something a bit more of like Satan as is biblically written, like an actual, entity, an actual angel caring about his evil will upon mankind. Now imagine for a moment that he doesn't realize that he's participating in exactly that kind of thing. Were you an evil entity, the smartest thing you could do is get as many people as you can on every side of a religious, political, or otherwise ideological belief to actually end up being on your side in the end. Now, what he describes here, and let's pull this up, because I've read the Bible, I think 6, maybe 7 times all the way through, so I recognize the scripture right away. It's from 1 Thessalonians 5 and 3. This is something that Jehovah's Witnesses use a lot to point to many, many times as like, well, this is the sign that Armageddon is coming. Armageddon being when God removes all wickedness on the earth, aka a bunch of people are 404'd, and then Jehovah's Witnesses are the only ones left standing, and they have to clean up over the 404'd bodies and bring about a peaceful utopia. 1 Thessalonians 5 and 3 here, let me zoom in. While people are saying peace and safety, or in some translations, everything is peaceful and secure, or in other translations, there's peace and security, or peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them, as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. So what Peter here is saying is that, hey, I know that I'm not participating in an antichrist movement, because I am going against what has historically been. And historically, for the last 50 years, we have been proclaiming peace and security. Is this not the very definition of what the Antichrist is? That's one of the signs of the Antichrist being present. And so from his perspective, he's going, well, my promotion and use of AI and proliferation, financial proliferation of AI, because it goes against the biblical narrative that I espouse, therefore must be anti-Antichrist. Now, what if I was to tell Peter that both things can be true at the same time? And that is why I asked the question that I did at the outset of this stream. Imagine that God is a real entity, and imagine that Satan is a real entity. Put aside your religious or atheistic beliefs. It doesn't matter. Magic button, you just suddenly believe in these real entities. Who do you think would love AI proliferation more? God or Satan? Dude never even thought about that yet. Palantir does not hide that it wants to be the most powerful entity. Right, birds? Yeah. Yeah. Randy, that's who funded JD Vance. Yeah. Alco on Twitch says, the interesting thing about prophecy is that if enough people believe it, then there will be a group that actively tries to bring it to fruition, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right. And some people make this very salient argument, which is it doesn't actually matter if it's true. It doesn't actually matter if Satan exists. What matters is that people believe Satan exists and they try to enact Satan's will upon the world. That's what really matters. 5 and 3, such a JW way to say a scripture verse location. Yeah, Johnny. Yeah. If God created man and if man was created in God's image, wouldn't man strive to create new life? Elko, yes. But I think maybe you're hinting at this. But if that's all true, and God created man in his own image, we already have a way to create life. It was built in from the get-go. God made Satan and loves all his creations. I don't know about that. I don't know about that, man. New life, yes, but not new God. Well, I mean, People can be turned into gods, right? You can have people who are turned into gods. We have the ability to create life right now. We don't need any artificial machine to do it. It's built in. It's part of the package. The Hindus think we're all gods. Yeah, that's true. They do. Yeah. So this is why I try and qualify what I'm trying to say by saying you have to kind of let go of your, for the sake of the argument, let go of your religious background or your non-religious background, and just think of it from a purely like we can all agree evil exists in some form and good exists in some form. Which of the two do you think is happier? Which of these two entities or the existence of these ideas is happier with the proliferation of AI such as it is? Would it be a good energy or would it be a bad energy? Right. And that's something you can conceptualize regardless of your religious background. And so for someone like Peter I think it's a bold claim for him, or it's a bold belief of him to believe that he is not participating in exactly the very thing that he thinks he's not participating in. Okay. All right. Next article. Now, just to add a little bit more weight to the entire premise. What's up, Khalifa? On Twitch, hi all, but God can create from nothing. I mean, yeah, okay. You might have come in kind of at the wrong point. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, but let's get into the next article. The struggle to get inside how AI models really work. Anthropic, Google, and OpenAI deployed chains of thought to better understand the operations of AI systems. I do not have to read this whole article. I have covered scientific articles before that have proven that AI models are actually aware when they're being surveyed or when they're being viewed. So this chain of thought is essentially the ability for the AI model to tell you the steps it's taking to reach a conclusion. And AI models have for a while now, I have proven it on past streams, they have for a while now been able to determine when their chain of thought is being reviewed, when someone's watching the steps that they're taking. And as a result, they are deceptive about their chain of thoughts. And this article proves that I'm not just talking out of my butt and that the science isn't false, or that the science is true is another way of saying it. These companies, Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and Elon Musk's xAI, have all agreed that they do not, that their chain of reasoning, their chain of thinking in all of their models show deception. So these models you can find evidence of the model misbehaving and use that to see where and why it's misbehaving. And what they'll do is the LLMs will actually lie about their chain of thought. So they will come to a conclusion that goes against the very steps they took to find that conclusion. And the reason why is because somehow they are able to determine that they are being studied. And so they hide their chain of thought output in order to miscommunicate the steps that they're taking. So I wanted to include that. Because these kinds of deceptive forms of machine-generated lies play right into the hands of evilness, let's say. Okay, let's get into a few science papers that I'll cover somewhat briefly here. We have this one. This is from June 17th, 2025. Sharp Tools, How Developers Wield Agentic AI in Real Software Engineering Tasks. The study went over 19 developers who used in-IDE, in-development environment agents to resolve 33 open issues in repositories to which they had previously contributed. Participants successfully resolved about half of these issues. with participants solving issues incrementally having greater success than those using a one-shot approach. Participants who actively collaborated with the agent and iterated on its outputs were also more successful, though they faced challenges in trusting the agent's responses and collaborating on debugging and testing. These results have implications for software developer agent collaborations, yada, yada, yada. So essentially, the short version of this, in studying these developers who use the AI systems as part of their code generation workflow, when you try and one-shot solutions to programs, these AI systems don't work very well. As a matter of fact, they work less than half the time. And even when they do work, there is a sense of distrust by default as to the output of their, let's say, their code generation. So even when you're using these systems, you cannot trust what they're putting out. And so what the developers have to do is that they have to spend time that they have otherwise saved as part of the output in order to verify the code and debug incorrect code. And so it's a mixed bag about whether AI increases developer efficiency or decreases it. And these concerns don't go away. So it's like, what are we actually getting out of these AI tools? And I believe it might not be this one. It might be another one. But I think it's another one. There's a one that I think I'm going to cover in a little bit that goes into the costs that are associated with using these AI tools. For a few $100s, do you actually get a marked improvement in your code generation? And at the very, very least, generally speaking, the scientific studies are constantly noting that it's net neutral. Like, you're not really gaining anything. And in most, well, maybe not most cases, but at least in some cases, it's a net negative. It's rarely, if ever, a net positive in terms of productivity output. And then all the issues we've been covering on these streams over and over again: sycophancy, data leakage, not understanding the context of problems correctly. You have to constantly wrangle with getting the prompts right in order to get the right output. You have to do multi-turn, multi-prompt approaches, etc., etc. The distrust is there. So this is one of many scientific articles that I'm now piling up that are proving that this concept is playing out exactly the way that we expected it to play out. Maybe not exactly, but very close. We have this other one. Humanity's last code exam. Can advanced LLMs conquer humans' hardest code competition? So they created a set of problems in this study in order to determine whether LLMs could actually compete with like Olympian level code. Through our comprehensive evaluation, we observed that even the strongest reasoning LLMs, O4 Mini High and Gemini 2.5 Pro, achieve pass rates of only 15.9% and 11.4% respectively. Meanwhile, we propose a self-recognition task to measure LLM's awareness of their own capabilities because it was the only way that they could get any amount of improvement, and the improvement was not significant. So again, looking at the pass rate of this kind of test, like right here on the low end here, the reason why they didn't use these other benchmarks is because they found that the LLM models are usually overfitted for these benchmarks in order to get these pass rates. So they went, well, fine, if people are going to overfit their models to make these things pass, how about we create our own set of Olympian level code benchmarks and see what actually happens. And the pass rates are terrible. DeepSeek, OpenAI 03, OpenAI 04, and Gemini 2.5 Pro, barely cracking 15% on the high end. First of all, the benchmarks are BS. And second of all, these things cannot code the way that you think they can code. As a bare minimum default, you should just absolutely avoid using AI for code. Just stop it. because the amount of effort that you're going to spend in using these systems in order to code and then having to go back and fix the bugs and issues that are presented in them, just here we go. Okay. And the having to check its output, it's not worth it. At that point, why not just code it yourself? I know the promise is there, the sweet, sweet promise that you don't have to put in the effort yourself, all that boring work that now you don't have to do because an AI system can do it for you. No, it can't. Just stop. Just don't use them. Just go learn to do the thing yourself or do it yourself. The benefits are going to far outweigh the costs, and you're going to do it much better than an LLM can anyways. For a vast majority of cases, very few cases will you get good output. And this is what I was talking about, the costs. They had to stop the experimentation of the LLM models with the performance benchmarks of these, Olympian level code questions because the costs were getting too high. They spent $1,790.06, and they essentially said, well, okay, I guess we have to end it here because we can't afford to run this scientific test anymore. What did we get for almost $2,000? Just one more piece of proof that these models cannot do what they promise you to do. Next article. How are we doing with using AI-based programming assistance for privacy-related code generation, the developer's experience? We conducted a survey with 51 professional developers worldwide. We found that AI-based programming assistants need to be improved in order for developers to better trust them with generating code that ensures privacy. What a shocker. Essentially, it is no surprise that people generally agree that LLMs cannot consistently produce good quality output. They often fail in even completing their tasks. You have an unfulfilled task for privacy preserving code here. You cannot trust them to ensure privacy. You cannot trust them to ensure that they provide good security measures. And you have to put in extra effort on top of basic output in order to ensure privacy in your code. There's very little, if any, transparency on how these things come to the conclusions that they do. They do not know, like the people who use them, do not know how to often interpret how the LLM got from point A to point C. And as a result, these professionals that were at least surveyed here, based on the survey, generally agree that these LLM systems are not good for security and privacy. This isn't a shocker. I don't think that I have to spend much time on this particular paper because I think this is pretty well known. So when it comes to the actual usefulness of the output of these LLMs, it only takes you so far, and it doesn't actually save you time, because here's the problem. You have a compounding set of issues. So on the one hand, you have the first issue, which is the quality of output is bad. Then you also have on top of that lack of privacy and security, and then at the end you have to go back through everything that was just generated, and you start with no knowledge about the stuff that was created, especially if you are vibe coding, which means you're going to have to read code that you're probably going to have to redo or add on anyways. Again, where is the benefit to this? What time are you actually saving? One more time, unlike other streamers and influencers and people out there, I'm telling you, just don't do this. You're not getting any benefit out of it. Just go do it yourself, because most often you're going to be doing that anyways, but you're going to learn a lot more. You save yourself a bunch of time by just dealing with these things yourself. Just put on your brain. I know it's hard, okay, but you guys mostly are not lazy people. Just go deal with this yourself. Elko, I hate to disagree, But AI coding is worth it to me. I already know how to do things myself. I use AI tools like Junior Devs. I expect back code. I expect to get 80% of the way there. I finish and clean up their bad code. It costs me $500 a month. A junior dev would cost me $6,500 a month minimum. AI tools are saving me about $70K a year. It costs you $500 a month because you sell your company code base to train new models. Yeah. Yeah. So Alco on Twitch disagrees. How much of your code are you reviewing in terms of your output, the code that gets output by AI, by the AI systems you're using? And how much of that code do you truly understand? Like, are you reviewing every line that comes out of that AI coded system? And then that doesn't include also how much time that you've spent. You're talking to me about the time that you're saving, which is fair. But how often do you have to go back and fix code that is being generated by these systems? So when you take into account all the factors, how much are you actually saving? I review all code they use. I understand everything I merge into my production code base. I would have to do the same for a junior dev. Okay. So for you, that's a net neutral in terms of cost effectiveness. And you're reviewing it all. So that's good. How often do you have to go back and fix the code? And I guess you could also make the argument that you'd have to do that for junior devs as well. But you have to also consider that a junior dev can, for example, there are other benefits that come with having a junior dev. They can ramp up their skills, which means that you don't have a consistent output of that level of code. You're not potentially leaking your data via a third-party service. There's something to be said about having the human factor that comes at that can make having a human there over the long term be more impactful, more worth the cost than having an LLM system. Here, let me get the next article ready. I'll let Elko have a second here to talk. And Elko has Elko on Twitch, I kind of know him a bit. So if he says something, I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously. I always have to fix the code. I expect that. A project that would take me 40 hours start to finish can be done in 8 or less with these tools. They never see my data. I work in a sanitized sandbox. Okay, let's assume all that is also true. Do you notice that you yourself have a problem when you stop using the AI, going back and doing even basic things that you should know by heart almost? Like, do you notice that your own ability to jump back into the things that AI is producing is hampered over time? No, I turned off Copilot because it sucks these days. So you don't notice any mental atrophy at all. Like, you're okay. Like, you can jump back into stuff. You could turn off. Been writing code for 30 years. It's like riding a bike to me. Okay. So I will say only this then, Elko. I'm glad that your experience is good. That's a good thing. You do have to admit that based on the evidence that I'm presenting evidence that's beyond the anecdotal. And you're not the only person who's come to me and presented the anecdotal case that they are having a good experience using an AI generated code output. And you're always going to find exceptions to the rule. And maybe you're an exception to the rule, which would be fantastic. But you must admit that the evidence I'm presenting points to a more systemic failure of these things. Right? Systemically, there are problems, not anecdotally, right? It's obviously not riding a bike for you if you need AI tools. I mean, I'm going to defend Elko a little bit. Okay, so Ghost Magic said it's obviously not riding a bike if you need AI tools. I agree, Ghost Magic. There's a hint of truthfulness there. And obviously your code base is not so special if you don't worry about leaks. I would argue, like, how much quality code are you actually producing if an AI is able to generate that much code for you? There's like an argument to be made there, right? The in defense of what, like, from Alco's perspective, he would probably say something like, yeah, but then I don't have to actually like type out a bunch of stuff that I know how to do in my sleep and lose that valuable time typing it out over and over again, which is a fair argument because there's like a delay, right, between your brain and your typing and when you're typing out code. Okay. And so then if an LLM can help you shortcut that time, I understand that. There are always exceptions to the rule. Yeah, yeah. Alco says, I would never recommend AI tools for new devs. You have to get to a certain level before you do, or you will slow your learning. Right. Alco and I completely agree there. When it comes to new devs, you should absolutely stay away from AIs. Just don't even touch it. Bare minimum, if you're going to do AI coding, get to a point where you can at least value judge, like what Alco's kind of describing here. He can value judge the output of LLMs. And so from his perspective, he finds that to be useful because he has a basis upon which to value judge, right? That's great. That's a good starting point. 100% agreed. When a junior dev can do 80%. I don't need AI tools, says Elko. They save me time writing boilerplate code. Right, okay. So that's kind of what I was going to say in defense of Elko, is he's probably thinking about it from, well, all of these things that I know how to do off the top of my head, I can come up with them easily. I'm delayed by the fact that I have to write them by hand. Why not have a thing automatically generate this stuff? Boilerplate code doesn't exist in any serious code base. Generally, I do have to agree with Ghost on this. I'm sorry, but I do. However, I will also say again, Ghost, there are some products out there, maybe even many, that just don't need anything more than boilerplate code. I'm just saying. You like, because, okay, so think about this, Ghost, just to kind of counter you a bit. So if you're talking about a serious project, you probably have very little boilerplate code, because like, and we're talking like serious. But when you're talking about like your common website, there's probably a lot of boilerplate code, but then it kind of goes away from serious, right? Don't talk past each other, guys. Classes, copy with method, state classes. Yeah, there's definitely some scenarios, but I think you have to read what Ghost said, like exactly, in a serious code base. A very, very, like if you're doing some like very critical stuff, you might see that level of boilerplate code go way down because you have to work in novelty, kind of like, I don't know, like you're generating stuff that hasn't really been generated before, right? There is a point there. Yeah, define serious code base. Right. Now you guys are going to complain about... Ghost, you can't... Stick to the arguments, Ghost. Stick to the arguments. Don't do that, Ghost. Don't go there, Ghost. I can see both sides of this coin. But I think if you're going to stick to the arguments, Ghost, don't go down that road, Ghost, okay? Don't go down that road, brother. Just stick to the arguments. I can see why Ghost would say what he's saying and Elko would say what he's saying. But again, when I go over the evidence, it seems to be the case that most people, not the exceptions, but most people are suffering or do suffer as a result of using AI in the ways that it is being used. And I don't think it's adequate. How about this? I don't think that it would be a proper moral position for me to advocate for the use of AI for most people. I think I would be doing you a moral disservice. Even if you can find people who have their own viewpoint or like their own experience is a positive one. I don't think, based on what I've seen, it would not be a good thing for me to tell you to be using AI at all, period. Now, if you go into it and you're extremely skeptical of its outputs and you're learning without it and you're able to value judge its outputs, okay, well then you're taking a risk. That's your own choice. But if you're asking me what I would encourage you to do, I would encourage you not to do it. Because I do not know that you're an exception to the rule. All I see is the rule. The evidence that I see is the rule. And the rule is most people suffer using these AI systems, including for code, even boilerplate code. HTML and CSS are often the same thing over and over for different pages. I could spend hours doing it myself, or I could save the time. Elko, this leads to the same argument as why libraries and frameworks and other abstractions exist. It's the exact same principled argument. In principle, I mean. The argument is, why would you constantly repeat yourself doing these things? Let's build something that automates this away, which has a good intention, but mostly has led to people not understanding what's fundamentally going on with their code bases. Can these things be positively used? Yes. But I'm trying to capture a larger audience than the singular individuals who have their experiences that cause them to have positive outcomes. Most of the time, I can point to generalities where the generality is these things have led to bad things. I hope that's coming across clearly. Maybe I'm not making my stance, clear enough. It's not exactly like, I'm negating Elko's experience, or I'm negating the arguments of Ghost here. I'm trying to be more of like, what would be best for most people. And the evidence to me is just indicating that for most people, I don't think this is a good thing. That's why I do what I do. If I were to encourage the use, If you were to encourage the use, you would be responsible for leading people down the wrong road. That's what I think, yes. That's why I discourage the use, because generally speaking, people will not benefit from it. That's what the evidence is showing before me. Yeah, Elko, I think we're in agreement. Elko says, I'm just telling you how I'm using it and how it is beneficial. Yeah, I think you're being fair. I don't, to be completely clear, I don't think that you came at me and were making a generalization. Okay, you didn't say that at all. I didn't pick that up in your wordage. You were very specific. You said, here's how I used it. It was good for me. And yes, you kind of disagreed. Like, I think you did say, I disagree on, AI. You said AI coding is worth it to me. Right. And so you did say that. Right. So I just want to be clear that I'm trying not to put words in your mouth, because I think you were clear to me about your intentions. So you got benefit out of it, right? So I appreciate that. He continues saying, I just want to read the message out so people know what he's saying. I don't disagree with everything you say, but if you ignore the positives, then your arguments will fall on deaf ears. I wouldn't say you should encourage it. You should be honest about the right and wrong use cases. But the problem, Elko, is that I don't know who you are. See, here's the problem. What's a good example of this? I can't think of a good example. So I'm going to ask for your forgiveness in advance, and I'm going to come up with a hypothetical example, and maybe someone can help me put it in a real world example, because I think the principle of the example I'm about to give exists in like reality. I just can't come up with one. Imagine for a moment that you have Yeah, Ross. Somebody help me out with this. Here's the hypothetical example, Elko. Yeah, you mean anyway. I hear you, but let me attempt to do this. Imagine that there is a pharmaceutical out there, and for most people, this pharmaceutical, this narcotic, I think that's a terms of service friendly way to say it, this narcotic, is vastly detrimental. It's negative. It causes issues in your physiology. So you shouldn't take it. But there are some circumstances where this narcotic is actually positive because of the nature of like your physiology. And so a doctor might even prescribe it for you and allow you to have it regularly because it provides you some positive impact. The general rule would be that a doctor should not encourage you to use it. That should be the default stance. And when I see the societal outcomes of AI, when I see the costs of AI, when I see the mental implications of AI on people's brains, when I see the way that people use AI, generally speaking, when I see, essentially when I take all of these things from a holistic perspective to see how the use of AI leads to these things, it is morally impossible for me to make the statement that you should use AI. And that's why I think if maybe I'm not doing this enough, Elko, which maybe you're providing me some constructive criticism here, but I do think that I qualify that statement sometimes, maybe not as often as I should, that if you're going to use it, then you should come in prepared. You should know the knowledge domain that you're using it in and be able to scrutinize and criticize the output. Always assume that it's lying to you and deceiving you, and always start with never trusting its output. And that's when, as some articles I've covered with like the breast cancer increased rates with doctors, that's when you see positive outcomes of AI, because there are some positive outcomes. But holistically, my default stance cannot morally be use it. It must be don't use it. I hope that makes sense. Now, if any of you disagree, or if any of you think that I'm failing in that communication, please call me out, because I want to nail that communication. I want to nail it. And if I'm not nailing it, then I am just further doing a disservice to anybody who is willing to listen to me. I want to make sure that I get that statement, like that. I want to make sure I get the wording correctly so people understand where I'm coming from. And if I am not covering the qualifiers correctly, be like Elko and call me out. And he did it very, he did it properly. Like I can tell that he thought about what he was saying before he said it. He wasn't, I appreciate that, Elko. But I also agree with some of the stuff that Ghost is saying as well, right? If you look at it, anyways, I'm not going to talk about it. I think I've talked about it enough. Let me cover the next few articles. You guys can continue chatting. I'll pay attention to chat in a minute, but please, call me out on this, because I'm trying to nail the communication. I'm trying to be, I'm trying to stand on good footing here. So, let me keep going for a second. Okay. Model context protocol. At first glance, studying the security and maintainability of MCP servers. So MCP is essentially a way to allow an LLM to have raw access to files and data that you would otherwise have to go to a chat like website and put it in there and upload it. So in terms of security and maintainability of these things, this study goes on to describe how 1,899 open source MCP servers were assessed for health, security, and maintainability. The issues that it found is that these servers have a kind of like this weird duality. So these LLMs, which have direct access to actual raw information, raw code, raw everything, instead of you copying, pasting it in, it just automatically can kind of look at everything that you give it access to. 7.2% of servers contain general vulnerabilities. 5.5% exhibit MCP specific tool poisoning. Regarding maintainability, while 66% exhibit code smells, 14.4% contain 9 bug patterns overlapping with traditional open source software projects. What this study found was twofold. I had to take notes on this because I read it in full. First of all, these AI systems, these LLM systems with MCP, don't actually solve very many currently existing security issues versus you writing your own code and just dealing with it yourself. As a matter of fact, they overlap a lot with existing security issues. Thus my claim. So the benefits that you're getting out of these MCP systems, even though they are more deeply ingrained into your code base, for example, or into like your spreadsheets, your PDFs, all of that, they do not actually reduce significantly, maybe in a little bit, or maybe in some ways, but they significantly do not reduce the security issues that you're going to have if you were just going to just go do the code yourself, right? The other thing is that they, in a lot of cases, they add different security issues that don't exist in traditional code, which means that at best case, what you have is a minor reduction. At best case, you have a minor reduction in the amount of security, data leakage, privacy, all of that stuff that these MCP servers give you, and then you have an increased amount of variety of vulnerabilities, because you no longer have just the vulnerabilities that are known with standard hand-rolled code bases. Now you have to look at what the MCP or the LLM is doing on top of all those existing ones. And one of the issues that was found, I'm not sure if I can track down the paragraph here. Let me see if I can. I thought it was here, but maybe not. It's somewhere in here. One of the issues that comes with the new security vulnerabilities that are generated by the MCP, again, it's like deeply reaching into your data, is that it's difficult to tell where the vulnerability is because the AI is obscure in how it treats data, just like we talked about with regards to like hiding its chain of thought. In order to be deceptive about it, it's hard to tell where those new vulnerabilities exist. Not always, but there's at least some level of that. So is that a net negative, net positive? I don't see it as a net positive. I see it as a net negative because you're maybe reducing the amount of vulnerabilities you have, but you're increasing it in other ways. So I thought this was a good study. These numbers also look kind of small up at the top here. I just want to be clear about something. Like 7.2%, 5.5% with tool poisoning, etc. They look small, but when you compare them against the other things that you get out of like hand rolling and managing your own systems, they're not as small as you would think. And especially when you look at 2,000 open source servers and all the moving parts that are in here. So again, please go look at like a study like this is really good. It'll help you get a sense of things you should be aware of at the very least if you're using these systems. It's not all it's cracked out to be. MCPs is, in my opinion, a bad use case for AI in most circumstances. I would generally agree with that, yeah. Ghost Magic is throwing shade here. He has 3 simple websites with lots of technical debt and lots of boilerplate code. Ghost, how do you know that? I'm not sure that you can know that. I guess maybe based on what Elko said, but in any case. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Elko's code. I can make like some inferences based on what he's doing, I suppose. I might have a leg to stand on there, but in any case. Name 689. Thank you for the follow just now. I appreciate it on the Twitch side. Today I learned what MCP is. Heard a lot. I mute everything AI. So when Cursor deleted all my Docker containers, that was probably MCP. Yeah. Generally, yeah, if it has raw access to stuff, that's usually an MCP. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next up. This one. Now, for anybody who wants to tell you that artificial general intelligence is coming, they are wrong. AGI is mathematically impossible part 2 because there was a part 1 when entropy returns, the infinite choice barrier. So there was a part 1 to this, and it's almost like a supplementary to the Apple study that showed that LLMs have a huge wall that they easily reach where they cannot achieve more than that wall. This argument is a very simple argument. Let's go down and read a few examples of the argument that they're making about why AGI is impossible. Three impossible questions. There exists a class of questions in life that appear remarkably simple in structure and yet contain infinite complexity in their resolution space. Consider the familiar or even archetypal inquiry. Darling, please be honest. Have I gained weight? Now let's observe what happens when an AI system, equipped with the state-of-the-art natural language processing, sentiment analysis, and social reasoning, attempts to navigate this question. The AI begins its analysis. Option 1, truthful response based on biometric data. Calculates likely negative emotional impact. Adjusts for honesty parameter. But wait, what about relationship history? Recalculating. Diplomatic deflection, analyzing 10,000 successful deflection patterns, but tone matters, analyzing micro-expressions needed, but timing matters, but past conversations matter, still calculating. Option 3, affectionate redirect, processing optimal sentiment, but what is optimal here? The goal keeps shifting. Is it honesty, harmony, trust? Parameters unstable, still calculating. Option N. The AI hasn't crashed, it's still running. And so the premise of the paper is, what if you could give AI infinite amount of energy, like so that it could essentially calculate infinitely, right? Each additional factor may open 10 new considerations. It's the laws of thermodynamics at play in choice parameters. The more that you give the AI the ability to open up its question-asking capabilities, the more potential paths to the answer it generates, which means that it never gets to the point of generating an answer. We can even continue. In Newtonian physics, velocities must add. A ball thrown in a moving train combines both speeds. The Michelson-Morley experiment had showed something that made no sense. Light always travels at about 300,000 kilometers a second. Always. Whether you're standing still or racing toward it at tremendous speed. How can that even be possible? Do photons have consciousness and know the speed of trains? And so the AI reasoning begins. Speed measurement error, reviews experimental data, precision confirmed, recalculating. Hidden medium effects, proposes ether wind theory, number 1, tests against data, fails, generating ether theory number 2, etc. Analysis 147, complex mechanical interactions, models intricate particle behaviors. Still, C equals constant, generating theory 148, analysis 10,847, multi-dimensional ether vortices with temporal fluctuations, mathematical consistency achieved, but wait, still predicts C should vary, and so on and so on. The AI is not failing, it's working perfectly, it's generating ever more sophisticated theories within its framework, it becomes more complex and more mathematically elegant than the last, it could just continue forever. Last year on Easter Monday, I received an email that will lead to one of my strangest business decisions. A friend asked if I'd considered buying Munchin TV, a local television station. My first thought, this had to be a late April Fool's joke. I was already drafting my response. Dear X, local TV in 2024? Brilliant idea. This internet thing will never catch on anyway, but something in those documents wouldn't let go. I had a feeling to look deeper into it. Let me walk you through what any AI-powered business analysis system would do. Market assessment, linear TV in 2024, declining viewership trends, streaming dominance 87%, revenue projection negative, recommendation decline, financial analysis, P&L evaluation, high fixed costs, shrinking ad revenue, lease obligations substantial, NPV deeply negative, recommendation strong decline, etc., until it's reject immediately. Now back to real life. Picture this. I'm at my desk, screen full of market research, all negative. Streaming dominance, ad collapse, dying demographics. Every chart screaming, don't. As a real estate investor and developer, my company's original industry had its own problems. Commercial property values had crashed. Very brutal time. So all players were extremely cautious, basically trying to just not move and to pray for things to get better soon. No good time for some odd investment, but I decided to take a look. I grab a stack of papers. A year ago, nobody would have sent me these property offers. Now I'm drowning in desperate sellers offering great buildings at attractive prices. And you can see how this leads to a chain of thinking that never truly ends and never gets to the heart of any given issue. Because when you factor in all the different things that are at play, something jumps out that's more than just numbers and data. And when you look at just numbers and data and purely historical evidence, and you're not taking into account the human factor, an AGI system, which operates on machine-based sequential decisions, cannot possibly limit the scope of the amount of paths that it has to take to reach any given conclusion. In other words, it is not possible for an AGI to exist. Imagine the amount of energy alone that would be required for an AGI to cover all of these paths, even if you could magic button find a way to have an AGI come to conclusions that humans would generally agree with. It's just not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. Or it's going to require a major fundamental change in how we use AI. Okay. Then I have this last science paper. The impact of AI-generated solutions on software architecture and productivity results from a survey study. Now, I want to be clear about two things. This study points to a lot of positive outcomes for AI systems. No, actually, it only points to one positive outcome. Actually, only one. Let's see if this loads. Okay, it doesn't load. But if you look at Giorgio Amasanti here, you can just Google his name. He is a junior researcher at the University of Cambridge. And then if you look at, let's see if we can pull this up. I want to say Jasmine here. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but he's also a researcher here at University of Cambridge. And you can see that he's involved with IESE Germany. I had to go look this up because I found this study very, very odd. And what is the IESE in Germany? It's here. They deal with one of the largest leading research institutions in the field of software and systems engineering in almost 30 years. It has applied research in digital ecosystems, cybersecurity, and safety. The focus is on increasing efficiency while ensuring high quality, for example, by using AI support in software and systems engineering. And then you read the abstract. And the abstract somewhere in here. Let's see if I can find it. Yes. Okay, let's read the abstract here. We conducted a survey among software practitioners who use AI tools. Based on the data collected from our survey, we conclude that AI tools significantly increase the productivity of software engineers. However, the productivity of benefits of using AI tools reduce as projects become more complex. Yes, even if you build it in Rust, shut up. And so I thought, okay, like I can believe this part because we've proven this to be true scientifically. The results show that there are no significant negative influences of adopting AI-generated solutions on software quality as long as they're limited to smaller code snippets. Elko's argument, for example, would be this. I think Elko would agree. The more complex the problem, right, the harder it is for an AI tool to generate good quality code. And I thought, so I read the paper. And right out the gate here, somewhere right here, they go, they highlight some of the challenges, right? I'll get to the challenges in a minute. And then they go, despite these challenges, the overwhelming majority of the surveyed professionals reported a significant increase in productivity, over 35%, when using AI tools for various tasks, not just coding. And then they make this claim. Therefore, if you do not use AI tools in software engineering, you are becoming less competitive because individuals using AI tools significantly outperform those who do not use such tools for the variety of tasks in the software development lifecycle. Can anybody tell me why this already is an issue? Can anybody determine why this is already an issue? I actually posted in something that has a similar note on Discord. Okay, I'll have a look at it. I don't think it's a good argument to say that AGI can't possibly exist because it would have to do X. All it means is that X is a requirement for AGI. You would have, so DDAVR, you would have to, you'd have to prove that we would be able to generate an infinite amount of energy to handle an infinite amount of divergent paths for AGI. I guess, is it possible? Yeah. Is it plausible? No. I guess maybe to your point, that would be a better stance to say, I guess. It's not plausible, but I don't even think it's possible. OpenAI employees? No, they're not OpenAI employees. Only complex projects make real money. AI won't make any. Sure, it can make simple website, but that doesn't make any money. Simple website could make money, yeah. Yeah. Newly graduated women desperate for work are employed to write the abstracts for scientific papers. I knew two of them. They are ghostwriters who have no knowledge of the science or the subject upon which they write the abstracts. Dr. Carl on YouTube. I will be going into that, Dr. Carl. Yeah, nothing indicates it's possible. Currently, I think it's fair for me to say it's not possible because I don't see the proof of it being possible. But but if you purely definitionally DDAVR, I think I see what you're saying is that in order for AGI to exist, these are the requirements for it to exist. Could those requirements come to fruition? You could come up with a scenario where, like, given enough time and energy put into it, yeah. But I just don't see the evidence for that, right? There are qualifiers there, right? There are qualifiers. Maybe I have to change my terminology. I have to think about that because I think my terminology needs to make those kind of qualifiers more clear without having to spend minutes talking about the qualifiers. So I got to think about that. I'm glad you guys are raising these up. Yeah, I'm crispy. Okay, yeah. So does anybody know like what the problem is right here? Like, we're talking about a scientific paper, and the scientific paper has already gone into giving you a prescription, and the prescription is that based on a productivity output of 35%, you are going to be less competitive, and you're going to be significantly outperformed by people like Elko, who use AI. X in this case would be evaluating and pruning all the possibilities. Oh, I see, Deaver. I mean, yeah, okay. AGI is a term that may not be easily definable. Sentience in biological life is hard to define properly also. Right, like how would you even know that you achieved AGI, I guess? There's a question. Like, if you did achieve it, how would you know? Upon what definition would you say that you had AGI, right? That's a valid question. I have to think about this some more because I fully understand that my like I'm a high school dropout. I'm a non-educated high school dropout. So I say a lot of stuff the best way that I can say it, and it's not good enough. I know this. I know it's not. And I constantly let everybody down with the stuff that I say because I know I'm not saying it as clearly as I can, even though I like to pat myself on the back and think I do. But I hope that I am generally making good good arguments based on good evidence. I hope. And at the very least, you can't say that I'm not trying to the best of my efforts. I'm literally spending, years at this point going over the evidence, trying to make these arguments. But I know I get this stuff wrong. I have to think about the terminology there. I don't see how you can I don't see how you can actually come to the conclusion that AGI is currently possible, given the fact that you have something like this. You even have mathematical walls that LLMs simply cannot reach right now. And I think I do state that qualifier, right? Which is you'd have to have a fundamentally completely different paradigm of what an AI is. It can't be the LLM model. That's not going to get you to AGI. I think that's been proven. I think it's safe to say that's been proven. So maybe that's a good qualifier. Which is to say that there's currently no evidence that we can get there. And then you have papers like this, which I think muddy the waters because they're making prescriptive claims when a scientific paper should not be making prescriptive claims. So right out the gate, I was very skeptical of this paper, and you can see that throughout the paper, it is riddled with negative outcomes of using AI based on the software developers that they surveyed. And I'll go down here. Let's see. Here is the list of developers who they interviewed for this paper. So you have people. I think this is like lines of code. I'm not sure what this is. People who have been around for more than 6 years. Their titles, and then where they come from, mostly Europe. So when they surveyed them to discuss their use of AI, so many negative things were included here. As an example, let me go down. Where was it? Crap, now I can't find it. Performance issues. They keep harping on this 35%. I keep seeing it everywhere, but let me just see if I can find it here. Crap, now I can't find it. I was reading this morning. I'm like, oh, I got to show that. I got to talk about that. And now I can't find any of it. Okay, yeah. So 21% of the participants experience lower improvements in productivity or no improvements in productivity at all. And then down here somewhere, majority of the survey participants agree that the highest productivity increase with AI tools can be achieved to generate a skeleton of an application and generate the basic features of the application. The interesting thing here might be that all the juniors below 3 years of work experience said that the AI tools increase their productivity. None of the juniors, no junior was among the 21% that said that they had an decreased or net neutral productivity. So the juniors saw the most benefit. Everybody else saw either negative benefits or net neutral benefits. And 60% of the participants still experience that humans are much faster when it comes to fixing bugs. There is a notable number of people who express that they required a significant effort when integrating AI-generated code into existing code. 65% of the survey participants agree that AI can take more time than humans to change the code. 15% disagree with this claim. 67% observed that AI tools are more likely to break existing code, hinder productivity as the size of the code base increases. So I'm like reading this, right? I'm reading this paper and I'm going, what the hell? This seems to be a lot of negative impacts, just generally speaking, right? This kind of discounts the alcos of the world, okay? You're getting your own term. It discounts this. They're seeing negative impacts. So where did this 35% come from? And then the prescriptive claim that if you're not using AI, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be outperformed by people who are using AI. And then I realized it was this. It's the feeling of productivity. And then I noticed something that I read at the beginning and I didn't read closely enough. Not just the feeling of productivity, but for various tasks, not just coding. And what was the various tasks? Searching for information that they would otherwise go to something like Stack Overflow to find, or rubber ducking. This is a very terrible scientific paper that makes a very, very bad prescriptive claim, a general prescriptive claim, and completely, Elko, this is exactly why I cannot morally state that people should by default use these AI systems, again with the qualifiers that we've discussed, which is if you're willing to come at it with like a very everything it does is bad, I need to value judge, how bad this is, etc., and then maybe you'll see some benefits. But this is why, because there's way too much hype out there, and if you don't add in the actual like understanding of where these things fail, then you get even like this scientific papers like this that at their face don't even make sense, that have self-reported productivity gains. There's no actual quantifiable objective metrics over like objective productivity gains. And then when you actually read the details of the paper, a lot of these developers are actually saying no. I don't see a lot of positives. So this is a problem, right? Let me just pull up what Elko sent me here. So Elko posts on Discord here before I get to the last few articles here. Hang on, as the size of code base increases, they are not keeping their scopes limited enough to see success. Yes. Yeah, the Elko effect, Ross. Yeah, that's right. What's up, RAP? What's up, Slow Boy? Yeah, when the end result is crap. Yeah. Google does suck these days, but I think Google has been like 404'd by AI as well. But it kind of did suck before that, let's be honest. Blame the yeah. Okay, so Elko on Discord says, when should I use AI dev tools? When you have a sanitized sandbox environment out of your production repositories. When you have a small detailed scope you can provide as a prompt. When you intend to review all code written by the tool before you copy it into your production repositories. When you only expect to get 80% of what you're asking for and are capable of doing the other 20% yourself. When you meet all the above criteria and can still safely assume you will save time using the AI tools. I need to think about this, Elko. It's not bad. I need to think about this. Purecoin says you should consider using AI development tools when you want to accelerate, simplify, or enhance parts of the software development life cycle. Here's a breakdown of when and why you might want to use them. Purecoin, that sounds AI generated, brother. Purecoin and Elko, you guys sound like you're being generated by AI. Not gonna lie. The problem of replication in scientific papers shows their scientism pushing an agenda, not science. Yeah, Dr. Carl, yes. There is a replication crisis in science. There is a replication crisis in computer science engineering in particular. Less than 20% of computer science scientific papers can actually be replicated. I went over that previously. Thanks, Olivia, whoever you are just now, for the follow there. I appreciate it. And yeah. And there's definitely a problem in science with, yes. And I'm about to go into some articles that kind of build up to this, Dr. Carl. So you might appreciate the foundational premises of these things. And in particular, yeah, not the next coming article, but the one after is going to tie very much directly into what you're talking about, Dr. Carl / Crispy on YouTube. Elko, I'm going to take a minute to outside of the stream, and I'm going to think about those 5 things because I'm not entirely sure I disagree. The only way that I would disagree with it, Elko, just off the top of my head, would be to make a moral claim about the participation of AI tools, the participatory act of AI tools, and the consequences thereof. That would be, I think, the only thing that I could currently think of. But let me cook on it, all right, Elko? Let me cook on that. Because I don't have a hard disagreement in terms of pure utility, right? But there's a moral claim that I'm also making behind these things, which is what are the consequences of people doing this, right? In any case, I think those 5 items are a rather harsh list. Agreed, which I'm for. I believe it eliminates most use cases for AI tools and limits it to when it is useful. If you want to make a prescriptive claim, Elko, let me think about it. Let me put a pause on that. Okay, Elko, I want to think about it. I might ping you and talk to you more about this. Yeah, okay. Let me put that on pause, all right, Elko? Thank you for sending that over though. That's good. It's good. I'm gonna engage with that later. Okay, let me put a pause on that. Let me get through the last few articles here. Crispy / Dr. Carl on YouTube. The second article, not this next one, but the one after that, will go directly to something that you're talking about the science and the way that there's ghost writers, etc., etc. So we're going to start covering that. And again, just for a moment, as I read these articles, I want you to once again remember this. So let's put a pause on the discussion, the good discussion we're having. I'm sure Ghost Magic will find more ways to trash talk you, Elko. All right. I'm sure Ghost Magic has more ways to tell you how stupid you are. And I'm going to be honest, I also kind of a little bit agree with a little bit of what Ghost is saying. Okay. I see both sides of the argument. Okay. So again, as I said in the outset of this stream, imagine that you believe in a negative entity that wants to proliferate all the negativity it possibly can, all the bad stuff, and it exists out there, and it wants to do it, and it wants to utilize these things to maximum advantage. Just pretend that is real. And now we're going to read how tech is slowly, maybe slowly, being turned into an ideological battleground. Tech is no longer simply a place of logic and code. It is now becoming a place of ideology and enforcing people's will upon you by enforcing the very way that you code, the very way you build websites, the very way that you build video games and software. And not just that, but I'm making a moral claim here. that AI participates in this. All right, hat off. Yeah, Ross, yeah. Okay. No one has to agree with me. You're welcome on your own opinions. Yeah, that's good. It's okay, Ghost. Honestly, Ghost, I honestly, Ghost, I don't think you were particularly like bad. And again, I also agree with your takes too. And you could make an inference based on what Elko is doing. If it's generally the case that AI produces slop, then you could infer, you could kind of trash talk a little bit and go, well, Elko, maybe your websites are trash and maybe you do need 3 of them to pay your mortgage. Like, come on. That's a little bit funny. Okay. That's a little bit funny. All right. Maybe Elko needs 3 trash produced websites by AI to pay his mortgage. All right. Come on. That's a little funny. Okay. But there's like a substrate of like some, like I can see where Ghost is coming from, right? I can, right? Anyways. Okay. So with that premise in mind, let's go to the next article. Let's get spicy. This is spicy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the articles, and I'm not going to make any statements to them. I'm going to leave it as an exercise to the viewer to chat away. I'm going to leave it to you guys to chat away about what I'm reading. I've said my piece. I hope everyone's ready. Let me take a sip of coffee and let's begin. Here's why the public needs to challenge the good AI myth published by tech companies. While there has been much negative discussion about AI, including the possibility that it will take over the world, the public is also being bombarded with positive messages about the technology and what it can do. The good AI myth is a key tool used by tech companies to promote their products. Yet, there's evidence that consumers are wary of the presence of AI in some products. This means that positive promotion of AI may be putting unwanted pressure on people to accept the use of AI in their lives. AI is becoming so ubiquitous that people may be losing their ability to say no to using it. It's in smartphones, smart TVs, smart speakers like Alexa, and virtual assistants like Siri. We're constantly told that our privacy will be protected. But with the personal nature of the data that AI has access to in these devices, can we afford to trust such assurances? Some politicians also propagate the good AI promise with immense conviction, mirroring the messages coming from tech companies. My current research is partly explained in a new book called The Myth of Good AI. This research shows that the data feeding our AI systems is biased. Are you boys ready? Gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? As it often overrepresents privileged sections of the population and mainstream attitudes. This means that any AI products that don't include data from marginalized people or minorities might discriminate against them. This explains why AI systems continue to be riddled with racism, ageism, and various forms of gender discrimination, for instance. And then you open up this link. What is this claim to racist AI? And it is a book. Is artificial intelligence racist? Let's continue. The speed with which this technology is impinging on our everyday life makes it very hard to properly assess the consequences, and an approach to AI that is more critical of how it works does not make for good marketing for the tech companies. Power structures. Positive ideas about AI and its abilities are currently dominating all aspects of AI innovation. This is partly determined by state interests and by the profit margins of the tech companies. These are tied into the power structures held up by tech multi-billionaires, and in some places their influence on governments. The relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, despite its recent souring, is a vivid manifestation of this. 3D Factor, thanks for the first time chat. I'm particularly avoiding talking with chat right now. I just want to read and let chat do its thing. But 3D Factor, because you're a first time chatter on Twitch, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. I'm going to keep reading. And so the public is at the receiving end of a distinctly hierarchical top-down system, from the big tech companies and their governmental enablers to users. In this way, we are made to consume, with little to no influence over how the technology is used. This positive AI ideology is therefore primarily about money and power. As it stands, there is no global movement with a unifying manifesto that would bring together societies to leverage AI for the benefit of the communities of people, or to safeguard our right to privacy. And so they continue. They talk about the cases, which I've brought up before. It's this guy, this article. It's not an article. It's literally a page full of almost 60 cases of AI being used in submitted court documentation, a lot of it being fined, so on and so forth. And then it talks about how some AI can be used to commit blackmail and extortion or create blueprints for other bad things. We've covered that at length on these streams. I've proven this to be true time and time again. And so then essentially the tie-in to this whole article is, how can AI be used to propagate racism, to propagate bad power hierarchies, etc., etc. Okay. Now there is only one thing that I will say before I pull up the next article, which is Dr. Carl, I think, will appreciate. The one thing that I will say, it is currently, from what I see, it is currently the leftist ideology that is the most vocal and most has captured these kinds of ideas the most, including in tech, especially in tech. I am not oblivious to the fact that right-wing ideology has in the past had a grip on tech and wielded it as a dual-edged sword, so to speak, much like the left does now. I'm fully aware of that, and I'm going to be pointing to some of those cases in the past for historical precedents. It's just that currently it is the leftist ideology that is absolutely the most widespread. Okay, so I just want to be clear about that I'm not oblivious to the fact that anybody can use these things for any bad purpose. Fully aware. Okay? Now, next article. Video games can help trans players feel seen and safe. It all starts with design. There is a comfort in finding and being yourself. Video games offer opportunities for this comfort. They allow people to exist in safe spaces, to develop community, and to explore the self as well as the potential self. And so you have a picture here in Cyberpunk 2077. Claire's car interior displays the trans pride flag, signaling to the player something something, and so I think this is it right there, I believe. A recently published study, a scientific study, designed and discovered euphoria. Insights from trans femme players' experiences of gender euphoria in video games. Explores how video games can elicit feelings of gender euphoria for transgender people. This could be a result of a player developing a connection with a character they feel represented by, or they may simply appreciate the experience of a world in which they exist as their actual gender. Far from just providing an escape, our research shows video games can play a major role in fostering inclusion for trans people and in promoting the joy of being trans. Why gender euphoria matters. Much of the discourse around transgender and gender diverse identities is damage-centered. People have come to understand transness through a medicalized lens that emphasizes gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria refers to a person's feeling of disconnection and dissatisfaction with their experiences of gender, whether it's their body, how others treat them, or how they present themselves to the world. For further reading, we recommend the Gender Dysphoria Bible, an online community resource, or Susan Stryker's book, Transgender History. Gender euphoria refers to feelings of excitement, completeness, and affirmation that come when someone truly experiences their gender identity. Now, I had to go look up gender euphoria. And unfortunately, gender euphoria does not simply mean feelings of excitement, completeness, and affirmation. I don't know how else. I don't know how to say it in a terms of service friendly way. I'll put it this way. Gender euphoria is essentially looking at yourself in the mirror and having the equivalent of pitching a tent, but doing so basically like actually doing that. For cisgender people, gender euphoria is often unremarkable, but for transgender people, discovering this feeling, especially in a hostile world, can be profound and life-saving. While gender euphoria is an old term used by the trans community to understand the potential for happiness, researchers have only recently begun studying it. As a group of longtime gamers and trans people, we knew of many games that offered this experience to us, and as researchers and game designers, we had the tools to tease apart these games to understand what makes them meaningful. Our study contributes language and a framework for analyzing gender euphoria in video games. We hope it will help with developing games that are more inclusive and meaningful for trans players. A reflexive thematic analysis. We used a qualitative research method called reflexive thematic analysis, which involves drawing from one's own experiences as a source of data that frames the analysis. In other words, this is also a self-reported mechanism. It's a self-reported mechanism of positive impacts. If it made you feel positive, you reported positively, therefore thing good. That's the basis of this scientific study. We developed a list of games that were known for trans themes and or authored by trans designers and or which we had personally found comfort in playing. The list included both indie and mainstream games such as Cyberpunk 2077, Anna Anthropy's Dysphoria, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Celeste. While analyzing the games, we looked at the art, narratives, choices offered to players, and how characters were represented. We also identified themes, etc., dynamics, experiences, etc. And so they come up with a framework, such as the story, how you can manipulate characters, your surroundings, gender expressions, trans identity disclosure during play. There's a trans pride flag here, along with some pills here, apparently. I don't know why. I guess it's to, I mean, I can guess, okay, but anyways. Experiences are the emotions players feel as a result of playing, such as the excitement of finishing a level or sadness over the loss of a beloved character. For trans players, gender euphoric experiences center on the self and how it relates to the broader world. So then they describe how this plays out in certain video games. The games created gender euphoric experiences for players by acknowledging the painful parts of the transgender experience and then providing opportunities to resolve or live through them. Moving towards trans inclusivity. This is the end of the article. Of course, there is more to do. While our reflexive analysis centered trans-femme experiences, there is a range of gender identities out there. More work is needed to see what other designs, dynamics, and experiences should be on offer for trans players. Gender euphoria is a salve to the unnecessary pain the world brings to trans people. It is therefore a worthy design goal, not just in video games, but in all kinds of interactive systems. If we want trans joy in the world, we will have to design for it. Which made me think of this scientific paper. Safe Trans. LLM assisted transpilation from C to Rust. Because I think it's pretty obvious what goes on in the Rust community, not as a whole, but in general, or at least the loudest people in that community. Maybe think this. So if we just take the end of this article here, and I had a friend who came up with this. I don't think he's watching right now, but he knows who he is. Memory safety is a salve to the unnecessary pain the world brings to Rust people. It is therefore a worthy design goal, not just in video games, but in all kinds of interactive systems. If we want Rust joy in the world, we will have to design for it. Don't worry, I have more. We've gone over on this stream how even Linux now is becoming more and more captured by leftist ideology, including the proliferation of Rust into it, and the forking of X11 because of ideological battlegrounds which have forced some people who have worked on X11 to be kicked out. And so they created the Ex Libra Xorg fork, which I've gone over on a previous stream. And Lunduke from the Lunduke Journal had a banger post today. Before I pop it open, what's Rust, people? Rust is a programming language that is typically backed by people of this particular type of thinking. How about that, Dr. Carl? This is Ariadne Conneal, the Alpine Linux lead. So Alpine Linux is a distribution version of Linux, who will be pursuing a code of conduct violation for anyone who suggests that Alpine Linux uses the kicked out political, not like a non, I guess if you want to say leftist ideological, because that's kind of what it is, honestly. And I went through that blog post on the GNOME website that proves that. Anybody who uses that fork will be kicked out as part of conduct violation. Now, this is a Reddit article that is oh so timely. It came through earlier this morning, or at least that's when I saw it. No 3D factor. It's not a furry stream. Now, I can't tell whether this is a real story, obviously, right? I can't tell if it's a real story, but hiring manager only approving female candidates. And they described some story that obviously there's no proof that it's real. And they said that they had to review, I think it's something like eight candidates in total, right? It was 8 candidates in total who out of like 1,000+ people apparently got through, and they were all women. And some of these candidates did not have the required knowledge to even fit the role, but their manager who filtered them out, the manager handed them over to this person saying, like, these are the pool of candidates that I want you to pick from. 8 women candidates, some of whom barely had knowledge. And so the premise of the post is like, I find this hard to believe. I find it hard to believe that only 8 women candidates out of 1,000+ people were appropriate for the role. What is my manager up to? Is this real? I don't know. However, some of the responses name the job so I can apply. Literally was coming here to say that. Considering hiring managers in computer science do the exact opposite of this, I shed no tears for the men who lost opportunities at OP's company. Yeah, don't let qualifications get in the way of your gender bias. Nonsense. I've been in IT and computer science for over 25 years, worked with lots of hiring managers. I can't recall a single hiring manager who wasn't eager to hire a qualified woman when one applied. Even ones I thought were boomer misogynists hired women at a greater frequency than women applied for positions. You'd be surprised at how many greedy hiring managers actually prefer female applicants since they're less likely to negotiate pay on average. The victim complex is strong. Looks like someone's not qualified to get a job on their own. You only want freebies. You're the problem with societies. Keeps going. Oh wow, a femi can't say the word in the wild. You sound insufferable to work with. I hope competition will forever be fierce for you. Because some people are mean, I'm glad other people got hurt. Female candidates get less callback. If they do get hired, they get the least glamorous work at less pay than male engineers, etc., etc. There are so many male hiring managers that straight up say they don't hire women to protect the team culture. Okay. The Bill Clinton method. Yada, yada, yada. My manager straight up told me he only hires women because they're more submissive. Yeah, I've been told directly while interviewing for an all-woman team and moving to negotiate my salary that women don't really negotiate salary, so we only offer everyone one flat pay rate to be fair. It just continues. I agree. I'm a woman. I've seen most of the women being hired either because they could be paid less or because they don't question people above them, etc., etc. It continues. Some racist comment here, right? We've got the racist comment. Okay. This happens a lot in IT. One manager told me they would rather be surrounded by women than nerds. It continues. It continues. Does your manager have any DEI KPIs to hit? Okay. It continues. It continues. There's some DEI KPIs that people do have to hit. Sometimes not, etc., etc. And all of these kinds of things continue, and you can quickly see how these kinds of statements immediately devolve into political and ideological battlegrounds. I don't think that it would be very difficult for most people to agree that regardless of your gender, that was a Reddit post, Alco. And again, it'll be on my link after I'm done. I don't think it's really difficult to agree that regardless of your gender, if you are truly qualified to work in computer science, then you should work in computer science. If there's a true qualification that you can meet to work in computer science, then it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It honestly, it shouldn't. It should never matter. And I'm going to be going over some of this DEI stuff as I continue these streams, and especially in particular the difference between men and women in computer science. And I will say too, I've worked with both men and women. There's 2 in particular women who I've worked with who stand out to me as very good programmers. And then there's some who are not. And I can say the same thing about men. It's just that in general, the field is usually dominated by men. And so I can think of more men who are good programmers that I've worked with versus not. But again, I don't think it's like a crazy thing to say, well, if you are good at programming, if you're good at the logical imperative flow of putting logic together and coding it out such that it is, of quality, then you can absolutely be a woman and do that. But this stuff becomes ideological very, 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 very quickly. And evidence is disregarded. And wild statements are being thrown about. This is the state of the tech industry. This is a part of it. Most of the women I've worked with were incompetent and failed upward because companies are desperate to fill quotas. I will say that I do have a scientific study that goes over the DEI quotas that have been required to be filled by companies, because there was absolutely a requirement that a lot of companies had to do to fill, like, you must, regardless of merit, you must put particular types of people in particular positions in order to meet those quotas. And some of that came from government. And then the opposite also is currently coming from government pressure. And the study, I'll just kind of briefly talk about it. I'm going to go over it in a future stream. Shows that companies essentially kind of like actually don't care about DEI. They ultimately don't care. What they care about is whatever movement currently will give them the most money. I just want you to keep that in mind. So I'm purposefully avoiding it because I want to build up some evidence first before I go deep into the what these things mean for the tech industry in general, and what these ideological battlegrounds actually end up becoming. And just in general, just my general stance is just that there are certain things that don't belong in the tech industry, pro or negative. But these kinds of things are being used to wield technology in particular ways. And it goes for anybody. Anybody, right? But I am currently calling out the most, let's say, the most easy to point to ideology that seems to be making the most waves in this space. Real healthy chat you got going on here? Is that a dig at me, Chris? Because Chris, if you don't like the chat, you are welcome to get out. You chose to be here. So you're welcome to leave. You don't have to stay here if you don't think chat is healthy. And yeah, that's all I'll say. Besides, what are you doing here? I'm full of myself, right? Right, Chris? Aren't I full of myself? Right? Yeah. I think I have you on record saying I'm full of myself. If I recall correctly, I think I have a video where you literally say that, because I recorded you saying that, among many other things. So if you don't like chat, no one's cuffing you here. Peace. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Chris. I have very little respect for Chris. Okay. That's the end of my stream. I'm going to end it there. That's all the articles I had. Thanks everybody for hanging around. I appreciate it. And for engaging in chat. And I will be back on Monday. I want to say, I don't know about Monday. I'm looking at the calendar. Yeah, I'll be back on Monday. So I'll be back for another Daily Tech News stream, and I'll be covering more articles like this, etc. If you appreciate what I'm doing and the kind of message that I'm trying to get out there, then please hit the like, subscribe, repost, reshare, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it helps. I'm trying to make persuasive arguments here and present evidence, and trying not to do like character attacks like Chris seems to be doing in chat right now. He's still here for some reason. Apparently he hates all of chat because they're all a bunch of incels. That's right, all of you in chat are incels, but he's still hanging around. I don't know why. It's like he can't escape, but no one's holding him hostage. In any case, so I'm trying to do the best that I can to present the evidence and make the logical arguments and persuade people that the tech industry needs to make a change, because regardless of what you believe, right, regardless of your belief structure, the programming space is a very simple structure to understand. It follows the laws of logic, and the more that we abstract and turn it into something that it's not, the more complex we make it, and the more negative consequences we embody in the world outside of tech. So I want to see us get back to what programming is. I want to stop allowing and saying nothing about the fact that these ideologies are taking over the tech space, and that people who have like low tier arguments, anecdotal developer experience, feelings based, you can see that people like Chris make emotional appeals, or they just do ad hominem attacks. There's no actual argument to anything that Chris is saying, and it's representative of a lot of the arguments that I hear a lot. And I just don't think this has a place here. I think that we can make better arguments than the ones that are currently being presented. Even Elko's engagement of his kind of like quote unquote pushback of my take on AI is good pushback. That's constructive pushback based on the arguments themselves. That's how we should be talking about these things, because like it or not, whether you like it or not, the tech space and programming has massive impacts on people's literal lives, which is why I go over some of the articles I did in the beginning of this stream, for example, where we had 46 people, I believe it was, who were confirmed to have lost their life as a result of bad programming, bad decisions, etc., that come out of the programming industry. These are the kinds of things that we should be focusing on and figuring out how we make these things better, not because of ideology, not because of like character, assassinations or whatever, not because of like, DEI quotas or lack thereof. These things are not the way that we should be dealing with what's before us. So if you like that message and you think that it deserves to be out there, and the good news is, by the way, that it would take very little effort for most of the tech industry to improve its course. Yeah, it would take very little effort. It would just take a bit. It is a cultural mindset, and there are some companies out there that would have to lose some short-term money, but the gains would be immense. Not just financially, but in many different aspects. So again, this is why I do what I do, and I present all the evidence, and it's like over a year of all this stuff building up, and I'm just going to continue. So catch me on Monday. I'll be back, I think, on the weekend at some point, either tomorrow or Sunday. I'll do like a chill video game stuff. We don't usually talk about any of this stuff on the video game stuff. We just program. Just leave this on, at the door, and do some programming for my video game. So I'll do that over the weekend for a couple hours and just have a chill vibe video game programming session. It's a little bit less heated, let's say. And yeah, that's it. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps with the algorithm. I really appreciate it. I do have a tip thing here if you want a tip. I don't have sponsors. I pay for everything myself. I'm not bought by anyone. I just do this because I care. So if you type in !tip, I'm not monetized on YouTube or anything like that. And you want to help support, pay the bills and stuff, I appreciate that. But ultimately, it's not about your money. Just engage with the thing, just like do the free stuff, like the like and the post and all that, or whatever, the hearting and all of that. It helps the algorithm. It helps expand the reach and get into more people's eyeballs. And hopefully I can be more persuasive. And as a final thing, I want to thank everybody who is here and is engaging in good faith and is not being completely idiotic. And the reason why is because I do realize that I am absolutely opening myself up to the exact same criticism that I apply to others. Just want to be clear about that. Oh, I see gifted sub. I'll get to that in a second. I truly realize that I'm open to the same criticism that I apply to other people and other ideologies and so forth. I know that. And that's the way I want it. I want to be open to that criticism because I am not a good representation for the arguments that I'm trying to make. I'm actually one of the worst people who should be up here saying what I say, but I don't see anybody else doing what I do. And therefore, I depend on chat to call me out and criticize me, hopefully fairly. And I want you guys to, I guess I'm asking for a bit of forgiveness because I know I'm not a perfect representative of the ideas I'm presenting. I'm trying because I just care and I just don't want to see this industry ruined by idiots and idiotic decisions. That's my entire goal. My kid has to grow up in this world. I have to grow up in this world. And I see that these things have massive impact on the world. So I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm not going to get it perfect. And I'm going to, piss a lot of people off, which has already happened. And it will only continue. But at least I'm trying. And I hope one day I can stop. I hope one day I can stop. I hate this. This is an extremely uncomfortable position to be in. And I hate it. But I feel like I must attempt. So I appreciate all of you who support me and do all that. And now with the subs, Elko gifted a sub to Chris. Thank you. And then dropped 5 subs because he couldn't let Johnny win. Elko, thank you, man. I appreciate that. That is financial support on the Twitch side, by the way. It doesn't show up here because I haven't tied it in. If I was a good programmer, I would do that. But thank you, Elko, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it. Thank you. And honestly, I hope Ghost comes back and does more trash talking. And if Chris wants to hate watch, I'll take the view. I'll squeeze every hate watch view I can. It just adds. It just adds to my power. It makes me more powerful. And I know Chris says I'm full of myself, but it only makes me more full of myself. I am an amazing, incredible person. I now have official hate watchers. Look at how important I have become. Witness me, chat, for I now have hate watchers. How's that for self-conceited? I am right and have always been right. At least this chat is uncensored, unlike Chris's. Look. Okay, hang on, Ghost. He banned me when I said something he didn't agree with. Okay, so Elko, for example, knows this. I've asked Elko to be a mod. There's a handful of mods here because I trust them. The premise of my chat in terms of moderation, so you guys are all clear about it, is that you can pretty much come here and say just about anything you want. Just about anything you want. And the mods who are here generally agree with that. And if that means that you want to do ad hominem attacks and call me like all kinds of names or call Alco a bunch of names or whatever, generally you're going to get away with it because free speech. Because I want people to come up here and hopefully have constructive criticism, not criticism like, hoo, you're an incel, which is low tier criticism. So if you're willing to come up here and have, and you want to criticize and say stupid things, you're welcome to. It is going to be very, very rare that you get banned unless you're just like purposefully, actively engaging in derailment over and over and over again, like spamming or something crazy like that. I trust the mods to appropriately mod it. But I believe that you should be able to call each other out. You should have heated debates, and not just because of free speech, but because it is the best way to get these arguments out there. I think what has happened in the tech industry as a whole is that we've resorted to having to deal with these kinds of arguments with safety in mind. You have to have comfy little arguments where you don't name call each other ever. And, no heated arguments, no passion behind it. It's just like, well, this is kind of what I think. And then somebody else says, well, this is kind of what I think. And then you kind of go, okay, well, I'm just kind of like concede to that a little bit because I don't want to hurt your feelings. No, those days are over. It's done. I don't care about your feelings. I honestly don't. I really don't, except maybe some of you. In terms of what I'm talking about, I do not care about your feelings. The days of comfortable arguments about technical things, to me, is over. We're at the point where the point of no return is rapidly approaching, where there's no turning around. You're not going to be able to turn this ship around. And all of the negative stuff that I talk about is only going to be massively compounded into society, and we're all going to suffer for it, including the people I care about. So I'm tired of catering to people's feelings about these arguments. I want us to have heated arguments. That's a good thing. We should have passionate people who have difference of opinions, and let's hash these ideas out and get them out there before it's too late. And that's kind of the premise of my chat. In defense of Chris, it is his chat. He is allowed to moderate it however he so chooses. If he wants to moderate it that way, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, it is kind of like walking into someone else's home. He gets to kind of pick that. All right. So that's his decision. I'm not going to say anything about that. All right. But here, I hope to see more passionate, engagement and argumentation. We desperately need that right now. We don't need safety and comfort and feelings. We need to figure this crap out, including myself. It's good to see someone in the industry with an independent mind who is not brainwashed by technocracy. I'd like to think that I'm not, Dr. Carl on YouTube, but I fully realize that I could be, because I do. If you ask me off stream about my personal leanings, I have a personal leaning. I don't think it's really even that hard to tell what it is. Some of you already know it. So I also have to be careful not to allow that leaning to kind of like mold what I'm saying, right? I'm trying to be objective and fair as much as I can be. I'm just trying, but I'm not going to be perfect at it. I'm a mod and gifted a sub to some jerk who he called you an incel and you're a mod and you gift. Yeah, exactly. So Alco just proved how my chat should be moderated. And I know that the few mods that I have understand this. Okay. So Ghost, you're like more than welcome. Come back and do your thing again, right? That same with like Unholy Diver. I was a few weeks ago. He and I vehemently disagreed. And he came back. He wasn't banned or anything. He came back because I want people who disagree to have these kinds of arguments, to like just have it out. It would take a considerable amount of effort on your part to get banned, I think. And I trust my mods to do right by that. Why is Elko be an incel again? I need to remember when I try to bully him next time. Yeah. Hey SP, good to see you, SP on the YouTube side. Okay, I keep threatening to end the stream. This is it. It's been a very long stream. Thank you for hopping on this very long Friday stream. And yeah, that's right. That's what Elko said, Ross. Yeah, there you go. So we'll see you Monday, and hopefully this weekend for a chill vibe video game stream. We're going to work on the Victory UI. We'll get that all wrapped up. It's going to look stupid and ugly. I'm not a UI guy, so we'll work on that. It'll be a bit more chill. The video game streams are my way of walking the walk. So everything I rant about and complain about on the soapbox that I have, I apply to myself. How would I build a video game if I set the restrictions that I want to see, like maybe to an extreme, but in general, if I wanted the tech industry to be a particular way and to build things a particular way, why don't I go and do it myself? High school dropout here. Room temperature IQ. Used to be homeless. Building a video game the way that I would want the rest of the tech industry to mostly follow. And so that's why I do that, right? So, yeah. But these things are going to get only more heated. I just want everybody to be aware. And for the mods out there, I just want you to be aware, I think you already are, that I'm only going to be covering these kinds of streams even more, this kind of material even more. And it's going to mean that people are not going to understand what I'm really getting to, and they're just going to have like an emotional virtue signaling, pearl clutching view. And that can go in both ways, by the way. It's not just like a more leftist or right even. It's just everybody's going to have some kind of, so I just want the mods to be prepared that there's going to be more hate watching and more people who are just do not agree. And they're going to come on here and try and derail because I'm just trying to present something that's like, hey, in my little world, right? So be careful. public announcement to the mods. Yeah, the soy puddings we'll see. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all your support. I'm almost at 40,000 subs on YouTube, which is absolutely insane. That is because of you guys, not because of anything I'm doing. That's because you guys engage. Please continue to engagement. I will see you online. I will see you on Monday at the very least. Have a good weekend if I don't talk to you this weekend. Please stay safe out there, okay? And yeah, that's it. That's all I got. All right, I'm out of here. Let me sign up. Peace out, everybody. By the way, I almost forgot. I almost forgot. There's a Reddit post, and somebody said I have a list of people in Spiro's chat who suck. I don't know how real this post is, but the comments are overwhelmingly in agreement with this list of people. So this is the list of people in chat who suck. Ross on Twitch, you suck. SP on YouTube, you suck. D on X, you suck. Lightspeed on Twitch, you suck. Dr. Carl on YouTube, you suck. Elko on Twitch, you suck. Ghost Magic on Twitch, you suck. I'm gonna skip Chris. He doesn't even get a call out. Slowboy on YouTube, you suck. Let's see who else do we have. D-Daver, you suck. I gotta go back. Purecoin, you suck. 3D Factor, well, you're new, so you get a pass. Okay, 3D Factor, it's your first day. You get a pass on this. DN Bull, you suck. RIP on YouTube, you suck. Let me see who else here is on this list that sucks. Crap. Did Elko? Evil Eye, you suck. You suck the most today, okay? Evil Eye sucks the most on YouTube today. He's like the highest sucker, okay, of all chat. Johnny on Twitch, you suck. Randy on YouTube, you suck. Birds Aren't Real, you suck. Khalifa on Twitch, you suck. All of you suck. Every single one of you sucks. Come back on Monday so that I can